Hello there, and welcome
Hello.
everybody. And I'm here with Master Paul, and tonight we're going to discuss Eric Carr.
Yep.
Uh, we
So,
decided to talk about him because uh, out of all the members of Kiss, he's probably, I would say, a fan favorite.
he is. In fact, I would probably say he's my second favorite member of Kiss, considering everyone, losing out only to Ace Frehley. But yeah, he's up there.
So we're going to discuss things, and we'll probably be all over his time in Kiss. We'll go forward, backwards, and in between. But yeah, we're going to take some time and discuss things about Eric Carr. Uh,
And by the way, Phil, I'm shouting out the link to this stream everywhere that I can.
all right, that's cool. Uh, but yeah, Eric Carr. Uh, what can we say about Eric Carr that hasn't already been said, or hasn't already been mentioned? I mean, fans love him. He was probably the one member of Kiss, barring none, that you could probably talk to if you ever were able to bump into him or meet him.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and one thing you hear from everybody that ever met him or known him, uh, he was a great guy. You know,
Yeah, he certainly seemed
I
like it.
have never heard anything bad about Eric Carr, minus what Paul Stanley kind of said about him. Uh,
Which
yeah,
it's Paul
which we
Stanley.
will
Consider your
definitely need to
source.
talk about that. But as far as that taken aside, I mean, even the man he replaced, Peter Chris, does not say a bad thing about Eric Carr.
Right.
Matter of fact, Peter Chris had a good relationship with Eric Carr. Regardless of what people say that Peter Chris did not like Eric Carr, Peter Chris is the only person out of all the members, past and present, of Kiss, on his website on the anniversary of Eric Carr's death. He's the only one to mention it every anniversary, saying how great a person he was and always remembering Eric Carr. You don't get that from people that kind of like, I don't want to say Eric took his job, but he replaced him, you
Yeah.
know. And one of the first things Eric Carr did when he got the job in Kiss was to talk to Peter Chris. He actually felt bad that Peter Chris was, you know, fired, if you want to call it fired, quit, if you want to say quit. Let's just say his leaving the band, and Eric Carr wanted to say that, uh, he wanted to pay his respects.
Which that alone speaks volumes about his character.
Major volumes. Another thing a lot of people don't know, uh, I'm not sure if it was 80 or 81, but Peter Chris had a daughter with his second wife, and him being Catholic, uh, they have a christening, baptism. And Ace Frehley was invited, and Eric Carr was invited. They both went there. Uh, Now, there was a rumor, which thankfully was spelled out that it wasn't true, that Eric Carr at that time was dating an African American woman. That was his girlfriend. I forget her name at the time, what her name was. Oh, hit me later, probably. But anyway, there was a nasty rumor that went around that when Eric Carr and Ace really came to the reception, that Peter Chris went crazy when he saw her and got a gun and started shooting at her. That's totally false. That's not true. It never happened. So I'm glad that rumor kind of somewhere along the line got ended. So yeah, it's a shame people have to spread rumors like that. Uh,
Yeah, that's not good.
and other things of as far as Peter with Peter Chris. Later on, during the Animalized tour, Peter Chris came to see one of the shows. Eric Carr was there welcoming with open arms. There's pictures of him backstage with Eric Carr. So I never seen or heard anything negative. So as far as between Peter Chris and Eric Carr, uh, and I never heard anything negative about Eric Carr or someone saying anything negative about Eric Carr from any of the past or present members, minus Paul Stanley.
Right. Now,
And
before we go into that, let me talk about how I first heard about
go
Eric
ahead.
Carr. So, I first heard about Eric Carr, of course, from you.
Mhm.
Because you, I've said before, and I'll say it again, you were pretty much my catalyst into seriously getting into Kiss. Because before I heard you talking about all this stuff, I knew of Kiss. I knew of certain songs like Rock and Roll All Night and Party Every Day, and I Was Made for Loving You. And I knew only two members of the band's name, and yeah, it was Gene Simmons and Paul Stanley. I had no idea who. Well, I take that back. I also had heard the name Ace Frehley, but I had never heard of Peter Criss. I'd never heard of Vinnie Vincent, Mark St. John, Bruce Kulick, and I certainly had never heard of Eric Carr. Fast forward to, I want to say this was a Skyrim stream that I was doing over on my channel, and we were talking about anything and everything as we usually do. And somehow we got onto the topic of who is the best, insert player of this instrument in the world. And I had mentioned that, I don't know, I feel like I mentioned like the Dragon Force drummer at the time as the best drummer in the world. Hey, Crit. And you you shot back saying no, Eric Carr is the best drummer in the world, and you sent me a clip of
Oh, hold up. I
Eric.
didn't say best in the world. I did not say best in the world. That
Okay,
I won't correct you on. I said he was one of the best for his time, but I will not say he was the best in the world.
okay,
Uh,
I'll maybe I did misremember that.
that's
I'll
okay.
take that.
It does happen. It's no biggie.
Right, but anyways, you after that stream sent me a clip of Kiss live in I want to say 1990 performing Black Diamond with Eric Carr both on the drums and singing, making the point of listen to how loud this guy's drums is and the fact that he was able to play like that and sing at the same time. You also sent me a link to the entire Creatures of the Night album as a way of showing, hey, look, this guy, no one has been able to recreate the sound of his drums that he had on this album. He was so explosive with it. And so when we sat down and decided that we officially were going to go through the career of Kiss as we did with Black Sabbath, I was looking forward to listening to Creatures of the Night, because of what you had said about Eric Carr. And it certainly did not disappoint. So Eric Carr is, I will agree with you, Phil, one of the best drummers in the world. And Crit, I see what you're saying there in the chats. That's a debate for another time.
I will, like I said, I will not say Eric Carr is top five of the best drummers. I mean, top five, no. Top 10, you can make an argument for. And as great as Neil Peart is, he can't sing and play drums at the same time. Sorry, kudos have to go to Eric Carr. And Paul, I sent you video clips of the '85, the Asylum tour with Eric Carr,
Hmm.
the Crazy Nights '87 tour, the '90 tour, his last tour with Kiss, Hot and Shade. I saw Eric Carr live 3 times when he was alive. I've seen every drummer in Kiss. Okay, and going to a concert, uh, Spectrum for Eric Carr, same for Eric Singer, and seeing Peter Chris at the forget what they call it now, but it's the new indoor stadium for the hockey and basketball in Philly.
Hmm.
Uh, I can tell you this: every time I went and saw Eric Carr live with Kiss, and no matter where I was sitting at in the stadium, 3 different spots at 3 different parts of that stadium, the Spectrum, and that was a good place to hear music. It just was had great acoustics. Every time I was there, I could literally feel, not because of the speakers do have a part to do with it, but every time he hit his drums, I could feel it bouncing off my legs. That's how
Which,
hard this man was hitting the drums. To get the sound of him hitting the drums and that sound coming through the speakers and it hitting your legs, I have never experienced from any other drummer. I didn't in Kiss. I never experienced with Peter Criss. Did not experience that with Eric Singer. Uh, I've seen a lot of concerts: Alice Cooper, AC/DC, Guns N' Roses, Van Halen, uh, White Snake, Iron Maiden,
mhm,
yada yada, Cinderella. Uh, all these had some good drummers, but ain't none of them were able to do that at a concert. And
right. In
again,
fact, if
sorry,
I
go ahead.
if I remember correctly, the only other person in history that you said was able to produce a sound like that, at least live, was John Bonham of Led Zeppelin.
Well, you have to remember, John Bottom was a single bass drum, and that was the standard.
Hmm.
And when it comes to heavy metal and hard rock, a lot of people to get that sound switch to a double bass. Now you get the argument from somebody, yes, John Bonham was able to hit hard and fast with one kick drum, but it takes a lot for someone to be just as fast using two with the double bass.
Yeah, or even these days using a single drum but with a double kick pedal.
And like I said, Eric Carr was a good lead singer, though Kiss did, we can agree, held him back,
Hmm.
but he was also a good background singer. He was able
Yeah,
to sing the chorus and follow up. I mean, if you're listening to any of the live, you can go on YouTube and look. Any of the concerts that Eric Carr was performing in, you can hear him singing in the background to this every Kiss song, ones that he played on and ones that he was covering. That at that time there was only one other drummer, Peter Criss. So uh, I will give respect to Peter Criss. Peter Criss is not really a rock and roll drummer. He is a more of a jazz swing style drummer with some rock and roll in it, but
yeah,
that's more his style. Uh, so he's not playing the drums the same way. Eric Singer and Eric Carr are very comparable, but my leanings are towards Eric Carr. I'm sorry, I think Eric
same
Carr can
here.
out sing and outplay Eric Singer. I am not
Agreed,
I'm
especially in the
not putting
singing
down Eric
department.
Singer. I'm not putting him down. But to me, if Eric Singer is a great drummer, a good drummer for Kiss, but I will put him. If I was to give him a number out of 10, I will give him a 7.5. I will give Eric Carr a 9.5. I don't think anybody musician wise is hard to say everybody that someone's a 10. That's really hard to do, but I
Hmm.
will give him a 9.5. Um,
Yeah, I would agree with that
you,
too.
you will hear, and if you go on YouTube and you talk to people and you hear their videos and they're talking about Eric Carr, you do hear one complaint that Eric Carr was playing the songs faster. Okay.
Right. Which we covered actually in the
Yeah.
last stream,
Yeah.
correct?
But it's a major issue. And what people don't understand, Kiss from the start to about when they start being a headlining act, all the way I would say up until 85, Kiss played 15 songs. Maybe sometimes maybe 16, maybe.
Hmm.
Starting I would say Crazy Nights, and definitely by the time you get to Revenge, but Eric Carr wasn't on Revenge besides a couple of tracks.
Yeah.
Let's go to Hot in the Shade, his last one. It's 20 to 25 songs. And you have to
Right.
remember when a band goes on, if you have one or two opening acts, Kiss normally had one, but in the Hot in the Shade, they had two. By the time they get on stage, you have 2 hours, maybe 2.5. You have to be done by a certain time. If they go, depending on the city, let's just say Philadelphia, for example, they got to be done by 11:30. If they go 11:35, then they got to pay fines and everything. They lose money. They don't want to do that. So if they're playing 25 songs in under 2 hours, that means you have to speed up. That means if a song went for 5 minutes on an album, they got to do it maybe in four in order to get
Mhm.
that song in there.
Right.
So,
Or not even do the complete song.
yep. So I do not hold that against Eric Carr at
Right.
all.
If
Uh,
anything, you told me when we were covering this on the last stream, he was just doing what he was told as
Pretty
far as
much
that
told you,
goes.
you have to remember Eric Carr as the first replacement. He was not a full member of Kiss, and what I mean by full member, the original four all had voting rights, and they all four owned 25% of the band. With Peter leaving and the initial deal that Peter got, he got to keep his 25%, but he was no longer in the band, and he had no voting rights. So Ace, Gene, and Paul have control. They're the three voters. Eric Carr is the higher hand. That means he is in Kiss, but he has no voting rights. That does not mean he don't have a say that they would hear what he had to say. It
Hmm.
means that when it came down to voting, Eric Carr
He
didn't
couldn't
have
do
any
anything.
say on that.
Right.
Pretty much he's an employee. And every member that leaves afterwards, Ace really leaves, uh, vice versa. Benny Vincent, Bruce Kulick, Mark St. John, Tommy Thayer, none of them people have a say.
Yeah.
It's Gene and
Which,
Paul. So, as a hired person in the beginning, he probably didn't feel, didn't have any problems. But towards the end of his time in Kiss, it doesn't look good. And I would dare to say if Eric Carr didn't get sick with cancer, I don't think he would have made it. If he made it to Revenge, he would not have made it past the tour. Or he might have finished the tour and that would have been it. Things
as
were
far
that
as him
bad.
quitting,
Huh?
as far as him quitting.
I wouldn't. I don't think he was. I think his mentality, even when he was sick, was, "You're not going to get me to quit. You're going to have to fire me."
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
So,
Eric
real
Carr. I
quick.
mean, we'll get into the part towards the end there, and we can discuss it because Kiss does a lot of smoke and mirrors. What we know now, we didn't know back in '91. We didn't know in 2000, but what we know now, yeah, Eric Carr was done dirty.
Mhm. And last time we talked about this, you said that this goes all the way back to around the time that Crazy Nights was happening, where Paul Stanley was trying to make moves on Eric Carr's girlfriend at the
Okay.
time.
Eric Carr, if I remember correctly, all right. Again, it's hearsay. I don't have proof, but I heard it from a friend of mine who knows somebody that was on the road crew with Kiss pretty much all the way up until Revenge from 83 to 92. And supposedly, again, this is a rumor. In '87, one of the first reasons why Eric Carr stopped talking to Paul Stanley quote says it's because he had problems that he wasn't the original drummer. I don't think that was an issue. He knew
No.
going into the band he wasn't the original drummer. I don't
Yeah.
think he was that naive. Maybe he was maybe saying, I am not getting heard. Uh, Maybe that was part of it. But from what I got and what I hear, and I myself have no reason to doubt the source. So from what I believe and heard, that there was a concert. I don't remember where. Uh, they were getting ready to go on stage. Somebody was the opening act, and they were backstage. And Eric Carr invited his then girlfriend Carrie Stevens to be at the show in the back. So she's sitting down, quote unquote, on the couch, and Eric Carr is in the, I don't want to call it the room, but call it the locker room. So he's in there getting ready, and Paul Stanley comes out of the room and sees Carrie Stevens, and he goes sits down next to her and starts talking. Well, at first the talking was kind of no big deal, just regular talking.
Mhm.
But then he starts trying to make a move, and she goes, "I am here for Eric. I'm waiting for Eric." And Paul keeps on trying to turn the subject to a certain way towards him. And meanwhile, Eric comes out of the room and he stands in the doorway and he hears Paul Stanley trying to make move on his girlfriend. And then Eric supposedly says something. Not, let's just say it wasn't too nice, but it wasn't unfriendly neither. Like more like leave her alone, she's with me type deal.
Mhm.
And after that, there was no talking for the longest time on the Crazy Nights tour. Uh, do I believe it? Yeah, I believe it. Again, it's a rumor. I have no proof. I don't have a video recording. I don't have a tape recording. But I have no reason to doubt this person that was on the road crew. He has no
Right.
reason to lie. And uh, much as there's always dirt on people, that's one of the few dirts I have with Kiss that I know of is about this incident. So, what can I say? You can believe it
Yeah.
or not. That's what I heard, and that's what it is. Uh,
My reaction to this, putting imagining myself as like a fly on the wall with this situation. I could give the faintest beginnings of the benefit of the doubt to Paul Stanley that maybe he didn't know when he first approached her.
Right.
that she was there for Eric. For all he could have known at the time, she could have been just a groupie that happened to be backstage. But at the moment that she said, "I'm here for Eric," he should have been like, "Okay, that's fine," and just been hands off about it and dropped it there. But the fact that he willingly continued to try to make a move on her after that, that also says a lot about Paul Stanley's character and why, at least of the one reason, at least of the original four members, he's my least favorite.
Well, like I said, we can Paul. When it comes to Paul Stanley, everybody's in the wrong and he's in the right. And we
Yeah,
all know it can't be that way. All he might be right in a
exactly.
lot of ways, but he can't be right in everything. And
Hmm.
his bashing, all right, look, he bashes on Ace and Peter all the time. He's been doing it for the last 20 years. But even before the reunion tour, he was doing a lot of bashing.
Yeah,
Okay. Uh, Ace and Peter aren't out there bashing. They
no,
reply, they respond, but they don't do the bashing. And sometimes Gene Simmons gets caught into it, but for the most part, Gene Simmons doesn't really do it as much.
right,
If he does attack somebody, for some reason it is Peter Chris. I mean, not Peter Chris, Ace Frehley. And you would think he would have that problem, but then when he's with Ace Frehley, there's no problems. So you're like,
exactly.
what's the deal there? Is he doing it because Paul Stanley?
Who
I don't know.
knows?
I
I
don't know.
mean,
But
I do remember asking you again on a random gaming stream because we agree that both Paul and Gene are far from sainthood.
hmm,
But I do remember asking you between the two who was worse, and if I'm not mistaken, you did say Paul Stanley, correct?
well, like I said, if you don't believe what I just got done saying about that incident, look at what he has said. He he has attacked Eric Carr, and let's give him the benefit of the doubt. Maybe Eric Carr was complaining, but he had every right to complain. My man was not. You heard the material that he had. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
you can say three of them songs on his I don't even call it
Rockology.
rockology, but I don't even want to call it a solo album. But his album,
Yeah.
three of them songs would have been great on a Kiss album.
Oh, yeah.
And
Which,
you can't say we can't give Eric Carr one song to sing because you know what? They did an album with 15 songs. They did give him one. But the very first time he ever sings a song on a recorded track, not a live track, not in concert, but a live song, they make him sing Beth.
right.
I mean, the man didn't want to. He even called Peter Chris and saying, "I'm sorry, but they're forcing me to." What can the man do? And he did a good job. Don't get me
He
wrong,
did.
but I would have rather him been able to sing a song that he wrote.
Or
So
if he had to sing a different Peter Criss song, sing Black Diamond.
yeah, which he does wonderfully.
Hmm.
And by the time he gets to actually get a song on a Kiss album, unfortunately, it's the last album he's able to really play on.
And even then, it's not even him fully playing
Mhm.
because by this point, sadly, he's got cancer.
Well, on that album, The Hot in the Shade, that has that song "Little Caesar," that's him in full force. It's
Oh,
after
okay.
that tour, after the tour, is when he finds out he has cancer. So, but like I said, that's in '89, and he's in Kiss 9 years. It takes him 9 years to get his song on a Kiss album.
Yeah, the only thing
Nine
like that
years.
had happened before
Mhm.
was the fact that it took, hold on, 6 albums for Ace to get vocals, but that's for an entirely different reason. That was
Mhm.
Ace's own insecurities, not Ace being frozen out of being able to contribute vocally to a record.
And I mean, they do. Kiss does some, Gene and Paul does some things that are very questionable. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Example: the '88 solo tour Paul Stanley goes on. He gets Eric Singer, uh, Bob Kulick, uh, I forget the keyboardist, good
Hold on.
keyboardist.
Time out for a second. Time out.
Go ahead.
Didn't Black Sabbath's The Eternal Idol also come out in '88? And I know for a
No,
fact
he
Eric
that
Singer
came
played
out
on that one.
87, and what happened was right after that album comes out, Bob Daisy, the bass player,
Mm-hmm.
and Eric Singer just weren't getting paid. Just weren't getting paid.
Oh,
Whatever
okay.
was going on there with Black Sabbath, so they were like, we're leaving. They both joined Gary Moore for a tour, and then Eric Singer does. Have you ever heard the band The Cult?
The Cult?
Yes.
Mm-mm.
Well, they hit it big the same time as Guns N' Roses. They were known, but they hit it big in '89 with what do they call that album? Sonic, not is yeah, I think it's called Sonic Temple. And the drummer at that time for that album was Eric Singer. Does a wonderful job. But when he's with Paul Stanley in '88, it was only for clubs, and I got to see him from the outside. I wasn't able to go in because I wasn't old enough to go into the club. But I was on the
Oh,
outside and I could hear it, and I
okay.
could see in, and it was a good, little for what it was, little club tour. But
Mhm.
Eric Carr on the last show, and this is known fact, him and Gene Simmons go sees Paul Stanley's solo tour, and at the end of the show, him and Gene Simmons goes backstage, and everybody's talking, and Eric Carr goes and he points at Eric Singer. He's going to get my job. That is creepy. What we know today, that is creepy in a lot of ways.
It is. Now,
And
real quick, before we go any further, I just want to clarify that Eric Carr and Eric Singer, there was no actual problems between the two, right? For all we know,
not
they
that
got
I
along
know
just
of.
fine.
Not that I know of. I could tell you the only thing I can ever heard ever said was that Eric Singer originally was not happy the way he how he got into Kiss. He that it's a no-win situation. You're replacing someone who's dying or already dead and
Mhm.
becoming the drummer. And like I said, it wasn't like uh this wasn't news what Eric Carr said at that last show of his of Paul Stanley solo tour.
Mhm.
Uh, but had that been the news that we got and we known it, and had it been 92, 91 when Eric Carr died, people would be up in arms. You
Yeah.
know, uh, you have to remember, and like I said, people don't have to take my word for it. There's a video. I am not going to put a link for it. You can look it up for yourselves. Type in Ace Frehley Florida Convention. And that convention was 1994 or 95. This is before he gets back with Kiss. And in it, he says Eric Carr was supposed to do the drumming on his solo album at that time, Trouble Walking, but Gene and Paul wouldn't let him. There was a stipulation: Eric Carr could not play or do anything without Gene Simmons and Paul Stanley's approval. So
Which
if
that is
somebody from another
controlling.
band said, "Hey, come play drums," unless Gene and Paul said yes, he couldn't do it. So he wanted to play drums to help Ace out, and they told him no. Mind you, when the album comes out, sometimes it's comes out a couple months ahead of time. So if he would have done Ace's album, the drumming, it would have been the same time Paul Stanley was on his solo tour. But
Right.
here's where I have a problem, Paul. Paul Stanley, when he told Eric Singer was after his job, Paul Stanley quote says, "Eric, you're the drummer of Kiss. He is the drummer of my solo band." See, initially Eric Carr wanted to go do the tour because he didn't have anything to do, and they didn't
Mhm.
let him go do anything. So he wanted to be on that tour since he wasn't doing anything, and they told him
Right.
no. Mind you, let's roll the clock. Here it is, 2023. The drummer of Kiss today
Hey,
is who?
Pacific. It's Eric Singer.
Okay. Now, the drummer of his little side project called Soul Station, where he does what you would call soul music,
We're talking
Motown
about Paul
music.
Stanley here, right?
Yep, yep.
Okay.
Who's the drummer in this Soul Station?
No clue.
Eric Singer. So Eric Singer can be the drummer in Paul Stanley's side project and the drummer in Kiss. Yet Eric Carr couldn't be the drummer in his solo tour and Kiss at the same time. It doesn't make sense.
Not to mention doing that Trouble Walking album with Ace.
Oh, that would have been awesome. Kiss fans would have went crazy.
Oh
Kiss
yeah.
fans would have went crazy for that.
Yeah. Real quick, can I play a clip for Pacific?
Sure.
All right, here you go, Pacific. This is one of yours.
Where the hell have you been, soldier?
Training, sir! Training, sir!
What kind of training, son?
Army training, sir! Army training, sir!
But yeah, mind you, Eric Singer, if you take his off and again, on again period in Kiss, in his time, he has done a studio track where he sung Black Diamond. I believe he has a studio track of Beth. He has a song that he gets to sing on Sonic Boom, and a song he gets to sing on Monster.
Right.
Poor Eric Carr, he didn't get none of that. He got
No.
2 songs and pretty much soured around, sour upon.
Which,
And like I
which
said,
makes you wonder, what was it that Paul Stanley saw that he liked more in Eric Singer than he did in Eric Carr? Was it?
I think
And
Eric,
I say this with no disrespect intended to Eric Singer.
I think Eric Singer is a person, and much like I will say about Tommy Faker,
They're yes men.
they're yes men. He's going to do whatever it takes. I'm getting paid. I don't care. Where I would say Eric Carr was more of, yes, he's an employee, but he's going to be heard.
Yeah. By the way, did you see the lightning outside my window?
No, missed
Yeah.
it. But yeah, and there was that Ace video of the Florida convention. Kiss had YouTube take it down years ago, but someone put it back up. And that's in Ace's own mouth that you hear that Eric Carr calls him
Right.
while he's in Florida, and this is when Eric Carr has cancer. And he says,
And real quick about that clip. I know you don't want it put in the chat, but here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to put a link to that clip in my Discord.
Mhm.
So if you guys want to see this clip, I'm putting it in my Discord. I'm going to assume that everyone that's watching right now is part of my Discord. In the general chat section of my Discord, I am going to put this video.
But
you
yeah,
guys can
you hear it
see
out of
it.
Ace's mouth that, yeah, they fired him. His girlfriend at the time, Carrie Stevens, there's numerous videos you can look on YouTube, and she is quote unquote saying they were pressuring him to quit, and he wouldn't quit. and refused to quit. But they were doing everything possible to get him to quit. Which tells me even if Eric Carr survived his cancer treatment and was able to come back, he wouldn't have been in Kiss. He
Yeah.
wouldn't have been in Kiss.
Now, another clip that I remember watching and then sending to you was this presentation that Gene was doing many years later. I think this was like 5 years ago or something, where he was talking about what led to Eric Carr's death. And one of the things that I remember saying was that Eric, according to Gene, lived on pretty much McDonald's, nothing but McDonald's when he was out on tour. And of course, the health problems that caused, which, yeah, you live on McDonald's. I don't care who you are. Eventually that stuff's going to kill you. But you told me Gene wasn't telling the whole story.
Yeah. Well, let's be honest. When you're on tour and you're doing things on the road, you're going to be eating a lot of food on the road. You know, nothing beats home cooked food. I'm sorry, nothing's going to beat it. But
Yes.
sometimes you got to take your chances of what you got to go with. And I guess he figured McDonald's is the best for, you know. You have to look at it this way: you're in a bus back then. You went by bus. You're on a tour. Let's say you're going from uh, Philadelphia to DC. You can probably do it overnight. No big deal. That ain't not a big trip. That's a couple hours. But let's say you got to go. Your next site is to Richmond. Still not a big deal. But your
No.
next one is maybe,
Chicago, we'll say.
let's say Chicago. Now you're talking a long trip there by bus. And when you're on the bus, sometimes you're rolling into places late at night. What's open? McDonald's. Not your
Fast food.
Denny's, your well, back in the day, Howard Johnson. None of that stuff is open. This is before you have a lot of these steak shops. I think you might what a Rustler Steakhouse was probably the only one I can remember back in the day. You didn't have Outback and you didn't have Lone Star, so you get what you got. You know.
Yeah.
Maybe you might have to pull in late at night at a Woolsworth. Back in the day, Woolsworth used to have a diner inside their stores. So, but yeah, it is what it is. But, Gene Simmons, there was another video that I don't know who had him take it down, where Gene Simmons says, when Eric Carr was sick, we had no choice but we had to fire him. His words, not mine. And he couldn't understand why Eric Carr just didn't accept being fired. And you're shaking your head. I wish the video was still up. And you're shaking the head. People in the crowd start booing when they heard this. I will tell you this: if you can go back to '91, and this all leaked out that Eric Carr was treated the way he was treated, and they had plans on firing him, sick or not. Let's say he never got cancer, Paul. Let's just play what if for a second.
Yeah.
He never had cancer, and they end up having him leave Kiss. The fans would have been upset.
They
The
would have.
fans would literally have gone in revolt.
Yeah. And by the way, I just wanted to point out, I literally just realized something as you're describing this.
Mhm.
And I just realized that there are some pretty similar parallels into how Eric Carr was being treated to ultimately what happened to Bret Hart at
Yep.
in WWF 1997 and what led to the Montreal Screwjob. And what you said that Gene said, where I just can't understand why he didn't accept getting fired, that rings very similar in my ears to when Vince McMahon, immediately after the Screwjob, said, Bret screwed Bret.
Well, let's just say this. Vince McMahon was scared because in '92 Ric Flair went to the WWE,
Hmm.
or F at the time, but let's just call it WWE, and he brought the belt.
Yeah.
The reason Ric Flair bought the belt because they owed him $50,000 that Ric Flair paid towards that belt. It wasn't just NWA owning that belt. Ric Flair had a say on that belt. He paid 50,000, so he wanted his 50,000. And until he got his 50,000, he kept the belt. Now NWA months later pays to get the belt back, but you have to remember Vince McMahon used that as a triumph. Here he's holding the on his show. There's Ric Flair and NWA World Heavyweight Belt. You
Hmm.
know, he was scared that that was going to get done against him, and it did get done against him because what's her name, the women's champion.
Alundra Blaze.
Yeah, she took the world's title and women's title and dropped it in the trash can.
Right.
So Vince was scared about that payback. But let's be honest. Vince McMahon started that fire. He broke tradition. He didn't listen to what his dad said. Leave the territories alone. And yeah, so Bret Hart, I think he was willing to turn that belt over and he said it. He just didn't want to turn it over to uh
Shawn Michaels.
Shawn Michaels. He said, "Give me the Undertaker, I drop it right there." I don't think that was a problem. But you had to understand, Vince McMahon wanted to promote Shawn Michaels. Why did he want to promote Shawn Michaels so bad? Well, you know why? Because who apparently had his ear at the time and still has his ear, his future and now
Triple H.
son-in-law, Triple
Triple
H.
H.
You know, I think the WWF should never have try to let Bret Hart out of that contract. That was Vince McMahon trying to bankrupt Ted Turner by saying, "Oh, you want Bret Hart? You're going to pay top dollar. I'll let him go," figuring he would bankrupt him, and he did. I think Vince McMahon was smart. He goes, "You keep taking all my top wrestlers, but you're paying over the price for them." And he succeeded. He was smart. He bankrupted Ted Turner.
Right.
You know,
But again, wrapping it back to Eric Carr, just again, the way that Vince would go, and storyline or not, the way that Vince said Brett screwed Brett rings eerily similar in my ears to the way that you're describing Gene saying, "Well, I don't know why Eric Carr would accept getting fired." But, and here's where I'm going to transition into it. You had told me on numerous times that while Eric was still recovering or trying to fight his cancer, he wanted to keep going, but Paul and Gene said, "No, you focus on getting better." Then they brought in Eric Singer,
it
and
was supposed to be a temporary thing.
yeah,
Look,
and
at
again,
the
that Ace video touches on this.
yeah, the thing is, from what we learn and what we now know today, Eric Carr could have played drums on that album.
And I think it
Would
would
he?
have been a better album for it.
He probably would not been 100%, which means he probably would have needed an Eric Singer to help fill in on some, you know, redubs or some polishing up.
Mhm.
But he could have done that whole album. And it was more Gene and Paul decision. A 75% Eric Carr wasn't good enough to a 100% Eric Singer. I think they made a huge mistake. And like I said, had this come out in 91, 92, I would tell you this. There is not a Kiss fan out there. I don't care what era they love. But had that came out, that the way they treated Eric Carr and what happened, it could have ended Kiss right there. Not
I
by the
believe it's
band's decision, by the fans' decision. I think there was enough people that loved Eric Carr, and let's be honest, even if you talk to fans that only like the original band, they still like Eric Carr. And
yeah.
they're even
Count
if
me as one of them.
you know, and even if somebody likes Kiss after Eric Carr, they still like Eric Carr.
Yeah,
I think this would have put a the only thing that would have saved them would have been probably a reunion tour. That would probably have been it. But
which ultimately happened.
yeah, I'm glad Eric Carr wasn't in that situation because either way he. Let's put it this way: if he had lived, I don't see him after 91, 92. I would even say after Revenge. I don't see him being in Kiss. I think
Yeah,
they were, for whatever reason, they wanted him out. And I think
and
that was
even
more.
and here's the thing: even if by some miracle he still stuck around until say Unplugged, and Ace and Peter still showed up. I remember on our last Kiss stream, you described it. The moment that you saw Ace and Peter come out, you knew that was the end for Bruce Kulick and Peter and sorry, not Peter, Eric Singer.
Yep, that was the
You
end.
know that was the end.
Mhm.
Imagine how much worse it would have been if that was Eric Carr instead of Eric Singer.
Yeah, I'm glad he didn't have to face that. But like I said, if you play the what if card, and let's say 91, right after Revenge, 92, when the album comes out, Eric Carr says, you know what, I'm done. I'm out. I think he would have went to Ace Frehley, and he would have played with Ace Frehley. And I would dare say that would be a good rivalry between bands. Ace Frehley and Eric Carr versus Paul Stanley and
Yeah,
Gene Simmons and Kiss.
it would be like the split that Sabbath had in '80,
Yep.
where you had Ozzy off doing his thing with Randy Rhoads, Bob Daisley, and I forget who else, and then you had Sabbath continuing on with Dio.
Yep. But and if Ace really did go, everything else goes through. I don't see it hard if Eric Carr never got sick that he couldn't get another gig with another band. Even at the
Yeah,
time, he told people that were in the business, if you were while he was sick, if you hear about an opening gig, let me know. He even heard about maybe White Snake, so would
that
have
would
been
have been cool.
interesting. Uh, but yeah, I do believe deep down, 92, Eric Carr would have been out of Kiss by his either by his own choice or by Gene and Paul. And I will say this: if Paul Stanley at the time was determined to get rid of Eric Carr and bring Eric Singer, regardless him sick with cancer or what if not sick with cancer, Gene Simmons is going to do what Paul Stanley says.
Which
No
is
matter how
sad.
much he liked Eric Carr, Gene Simmons is going to do what Paul Stanley said. If Paul Stanley was determined to get rid of Eric Carr, and if you listen to his book and his audio book, especially, you can listen to it for free on YouTube. The way he talks bad about Eric Carr makes it sound he didn't want him there. And
Paul
if that
Stanley.
and if that was the case, going through the well, you had to remember in 1990 when they were going on the Hot and Shade tour,
Hmm.
Paul Stanley decides no solos for anybody. Again, they're doing 25 songs. Eric Carr only had really two things on a concert: his drum solo and him singing Black Diamond. To take them two things away, you're pretty much telling him to get lost. And I believe it was only a couple months into that tour, and they did bring back Eric Carr's drum solo. He was the only one that had a solo. And if you listen to that solo, you would see why Kiss fans love Eric Carr, his playing, and especially his drum solos.
Yeah,
You know, so but like I said, but what really gets me if I do have a beef, and not anything against Eric Singer, is the comment for his excuse about him being in Peter Chris's makeup and Tommy Thayer being in Ace's makeup. The excuse he uses, well, Eric Carr and Benny were in makeup and that didn't go well.
Which I'm pretty
No.
certain
That
that's basically Paul Stanley speaking through Eric
Yeah.
Singer.
that is let me say this again. In 1980, when they did Unmasked, they did one show in the United States, one, to introduce Eric Carr. Besides that one show, they did not tour the United States for Unmasked.
Mhm.
Okay? And normally back in the day when you toured, if your tour was good, your album was good. Now Unmasked did go gold, but I think had they toured, it probably would have went platinum.
Right. You also have to consider this was immediately after Dynasty, which was such a, at
Already
least at
had
the
Kiss
time,
fans.
huge genre shift.
Yep. So here you have, to get a gold record, 500,000 Kiss fans. And then you do something like Music from the Elder. Even Eric Carr told him not to do it. He didn't have a vote. Ace really was against it, but they outvoted him.
And ultimately, that's one reason why he left.
Yep. And Elder did not even go gold. They didn't even tour for that. So now there's two albums, two no tours of the United States, and out of them two albums, you only have one gold record. Not good. Not good. Not good. So then when you get to Creatures of the Night, and as great as Creatures of the Night is, you already ditch. It's pretty much the Star Wars thing. You destroyed your fan base. You destroy your fandom. And yeah, it'll be like tomorrow. Oh yeah, we're going to do a Luke Skywalker movie. Now, had you done a Luke Skywalker movie probably in 2014, it might have done well. But doing it 2023, it's not going to do well because there's enough Star Wars fans. They're done with Star Wars. It won't pull people in. No matter how much they like Luke Skywalker, or even if Mark Hamill was to play the part of an older Luke Skywalker, it wouldn't do well. So, as good as Creatures of the Night was and how great an album, it was affected by the fandom of the other two albums. Had nothing to do about Benny being in makeup or Eric Carr being in makeup. And I'll be honest, Kiss today lost a golden opportunity of letting Eric Singer having his own makeup and Tommy Thayer having his own makeup. If they had their own makeup design, you wouldn't have the old Kiss fans, the original band, upset. Okay. There wouldn't be an issue putting Peter and Ace up there for a final show because everybody has their own makeup.
Mhm.
And the merchandising, Paul, by putting them new faces and new makeup images, people will buy. Kiss fans will buy it like hotcakes.
Yeah, that is true.
I mean, I can remember in 1985 and 86, Kiss fans were collecting a lot of stuff then. And what people wanted was that 82, 83 lineup of Vinny and Eric in makeup. We wanted the pictures. If they had interview albums with a picture disc on it. Do you know what a picture disc is?
Yes.
Okay. There are records that have like an image on there. Sometimes the record actual album, but sometimes they'll make an album with an interview and they'll just take random pictures of it. Kiss fans wanted to buy anything that had Benny Vincent and Eric Carr's makeup on there. They just went crazy for it. And I could tell you this, people were paying, like, I can remember going to certain places where they'll sell pictures of Kiss on stage. So Benny and Eric Carr's makeup of that era of the band, you couldn't keep them. They were buying them like hotcakes. So, and I've never heard a Kiss fan say, well, I didn't like Creatures of the Night because Eric was in makeup and Vinnie Vincent was in makeup. And never heard that complaint.
Yeah.
ever.
Plus, Vinnie Vincent shouldn't have even been a factor, at least visually, because Ace is still on the cover.
Yep. Like I said, he only did the tour. I really wish Lick It Up had the makeup on. But be that as it may, I don't have a problem Kiss in makeup or not in makeup. I wouldn't have a problem if one of the tours when the original band got back together, if they had no makeup on. It wouldn't matter to me.
Yeah.
To me,
I mean, even today on their Kiss cruises, there's performances that they do during the day, the current lineup, where there's no
with
makeup and
no
everyone's still
makeup
having
on,
fun.
you know. I mean, back in the day in the 70s, because it was image and the mystery of what they look like, you know. But once that makeup come off, yeah, it's nice to see them in makeup, but the magic behind what was behind it, the makeup, that's gone. That's like
Yeah.
seeing Darth Vader without the helmet. When
Or
once you see him without the helmet, what's the deal, right?
or seeing Kane without the mask.
There you go. So, but yeah, Eric Carr, like I said, I know we talked about a lot of negative things. Sadly, that's where it ends with that. But as far as like Kiss fans, forget Gene and Paul, whatever they say or whatever they have, Kiss fans love this guy. And
Yeah.
I would tell you this, if Eric Carr isn't in the top three of the most popular members of Kiss, he is definitely in the top five.
Yeah.
Definitely in
Like
the
I
top.
said, he's number 2 for me.
Yeah. For me, I love the original band. I love the non makeup band.
Hmm.
I like Tommy Thayer and Eric Singer, but they're my least favorite version of the band. Had they had their own makeup and they did their own thing, I wouldn't have a problem with it.
Right.
But far as favorite member, Eric Carr is my favorite member. You know,
I'm
and I
gonna
would tell you this: if Eric Carr, if we, like I said, a what if in '92, he would have said, "That's it, I'm gone," and he never had cancer. Wherever he went, I would have been listening to him. I would have followed him, and I would, as much as of a Kiss fan I am, Paul, and I was a Kiss diehard Kiss fan up until 2003.
hmm
Once they start putting them guys in the original guys' makeup, for me that was it. Done. You know, it didn't mean I stopped collecting Kiss. It didn't mean I stopped listening to Kiss. But as far as that diehard Kiss fan, no, I am not that person today.
I'm gonna really quick. I'm just off the cuff gonna rank, and I maybe we can end the stream this way, but I'm gonna rank every member of Kiss from my favorite to my least favorite.
Go ahead.
So at the now I don't. So at the bottom, and I'm looking at this as far as how I enjoy listening to what they do musically. This is not taking into account what I think of them as a person, because if that's the case, Paul Stanley's dead last. But at the bottom, Mark St. John. Up from that, Vinnie Vincent. Up from that, Eric Singer. Up from that, Bruce Kulick. Up from that, Paul Stanley. Up from that, Peter Criss. Up from that, Gene. Up from that, Eric. And then at the top, Ace.
So the Faker is nowhere on your list.
Oh, sorry, I forgot Tommy Thayer. I'll put him between Mark St. John and Vinnie Vincent.
Okay. If he'd done his own stuff and what he had built upon, I could respect Tommy Thayer. But because he is practically, and I know in some cases he's probably told to, but still, there's nothing original about the guy, you know? So there's nothing, I hate to say this. Mark St. John, he wasn't for Kiss. So he is my least favorite member. After that, I put Tommy Thayer. Now, it does not mean I don't like Tommy Thayer as a guitarist, but when you're imitating and duplicating, you're not doing anything original. No, no. And even on the two albums that he did with Kiss, Studio Monster and Sonic Boom, wasn't enough to win me over. So yeah, I put him right above Mark St. John. Uh, I would then put, and it's not a knock on Eric Singer because I do like Eric Singer as a drummer. Not better than Peter Chris or Eric Carr. I'm sorry, but then it'll be Eric Singer, followed by Bruce Kulick. Vinny, and the only reason I would give him slightly over Bruce Kulick, really, I can't do that. He's right under Bruce Kulick. Vinny Vincent, and the reason I give him higher, he wrote some really good Kiss songs. Creatures of
Yeah.
the Night, Lick It Up, and Revenge is proof that he wrote some good songs. Uh, did he save Kiss? That's the big question Kiss fans say. No. Eric Carr saved Kiss. Eric Carr carried Kiss. If there's a man that they need to be grateful every day that Eric Carr was the replacement for Peter Chris.
Yeah.
But
And
going back to it, sorry, go ahead.
real
Go ahead.
quick, while I have it pulled up, I will say this in credit to Tommy Thayer. Even though this has been discontinued, he does have a pretty cool signature guitar here.
I ain't paying the faker $899 for it.
I know, and like I said, I've already got a guitar like that ain't as shiny but plays just as good. But I gotta recognize a good craft when I see one.
But after Bruce Kulick, I would then put Peter Criss, and then Gene Simmons, and then Paul Stanley. Now, the reason I put Paul Stanley over Gene Simmons, give the man credit. He can sing and he can play that rhythm guitar. And for the period of 84 to 89, let's be honest, Paul Stanley carried Kiss.
He did.
So that's the only reason I put him slightly over Gene Simmons, even though character wise, I think it's the other way around. Gene Simmons, hard to believe, but he has better character than Paul Stanley.
Yes.
Then I would put Ace Frehley as number 2, and then Eric Carr as number 1. Like I said, no, he is not an original member. He'll never be the original member, but he has the respect and the ability that not even, I would say, some of the original members have to touch him.
He's in a class all his own.
Yes. I was always taught this, and just something to ponder and think about. When the dear Lord gives you a gift and you don't accept it or treat it right, the dear Lord takes that gift away. And I'm not saying this that Eric Carr should have died, it was meant to die, but I do think the dear Lord called Eric Carr to a better place to be away from that. And thank God he didn't have to deal, not to say that he would have prevented it or would have stopped it, but he didn't have to deal with all the afterward effect of the reunion tour. Would you come back to put Peter's makeup on? No. And I don't think if he was alive, Eric Carr would ever have put on Peter Chris's makeup.
No, he said. I think at best it would have been like, if you're gonna bring me back and you're gonna put me in makeup, let me wear my Fox makeup again.
Yeah.
But no.
But I will do this. I did this stream because of how I feel about Eric Carr, and especially in the wrongs that were done to him. Anything in life, some people are going to get treated this way, but that man did not deserve to be treated the way he was treated. And I know now, Paul Stanley has said that he wished he did things differently, and
hindsight's always 2020.
2020. You know what? You should have thought about that from the beginning. And I'm sorry. Everybody after a certain age knows there's a right way and a wrong way. And I want to say this: There was nothing stopping Kiss, and they were on the same record label, Mercury, as Def Leppard.
Mhm.
Def Leppard's drummer got into an accident and lost his arm.
Yes.
Def Leppard did not make that album, didn't put that album out until that drummer was able to set up a drum kit and a sound so he can play that album on tour and finish the recording one handedly. And they delayed that album by 4 years doing that. If Def Leppard could have done that, and it was a very successful album that they put out.
Yeah.
And they're on the same record label. That tells me Kiss could have said, "Look, we're going to wait and see what happens with Eric Carr. If he makes a recovery, fine. If he doesn't, then we'll at least let him go out, knowing that he's a member of Kiss." And you still could have brought Eric Singer on board, but
Yeah.
they didn't do it. And I'm sorry, if Def Leppard could have done it, Kiss could have done it. And like I said, Paul, they're on the same record label. So if the record label was willing to wait 4 years for that album to be done and released, what was the hurt of delaying a Kiss album a year? It wasn't a year
Yeah.
that it took from the time he had his first operation till he died. I think it was maybe 6 months. They couldn't have given the man 6 months. You know, at least let him go out the way he wanted to go out, knowing he was a member of Kiss. That's the way we thought unofficially. Everybody thought that's what happened. He went out knowing that he was a member of Kiss. But over the years, come to find out, and again, Ace Frehley proved it, he didn't go out as a member of Kiss. He was fired. And even Peter Criss said that the way they treated Eric Carr, they drove that man crazy. And I believe Peter Criss. I'm
In
sorry.
fact, I believe Ace Frehley in that clip
You know,
all but outright said Paul Stanley and Gene Simmons, by killing his spirit, killed Eric Carr.
yeah. And that can be done. People don't believe that, Paul. You don't have to pull a trigger of a gun. You don't have to poison somebody. But yes, you can mentally dispirit someone to where emotionally it kills them. And I think that's what happened to Eric Carr. You know,
Yeah.
yes, he had cancer. Yes, he had the worst kind of cancer ever you can get. But having that knowledge that he didn't stress, that was stress he didn't need. And to think that all them years, he gave them 10 good years of his life and dedication, they couldn't give him a couple months. That's
Yeah.
sad.
It
That's
is.
sad. So, as a person that's been on this earth 50 years, I witnessed karma. In my world, it's called divine justice. When you do evil, it boomerangs and comes back. And I'm not saying or wishing anybody harm, but trust me when I say this, it does come back to haunt you and sometimes bite you. So, yeah. Uh, like I said, that man doesn't deserve it. And he was a great drummer, a great singer. If anybody can go on YouTube, you can listen to his album Rockology that was done after his death by Bruce Kulick.
Yes.
Them songs, they're not the greatest because there are a lot of demos that have been
Yeah.
remade, but
A lot of them don't even have actual words to them. It's
Yep.
just him vocalizing a
But-
melody.
some of them songs you're like, that could have been on a Kiss album.
Yes.
And would have been, it might not have been a hit, it might not have been a video on MTV, but it would have been a hit to Kiss fans. There's a difference there. What you see on the album as a hit, where a Kiss fan will say, "Oh, you know that song? I'll throw one out there. I Still Love You on Creatures of the Night."
Mhm.
Yes, that was never a video. It was released as a single, but that's a good song.
Yeah.
That is something a Kiss fan would want to hear. I would say any of them songs he did, if they were polished up and done, could have been great song on a Kiss album. So, but you know, what else can I say? What else can I say? You know,
Nothing else to
you know,
say.
other than thank you, Paul, for doing the stream. Uh, like I said,
Absolutely. Thank you.
we could do Paul Stanley. We could do any member of Kiss. I just think this one Eric Carr was enough. And if you have a chance, go on YouTube. It doesn't matter what year you punch in there. See a one of the live show and listen to it, or just one song from the live show with Eric Carr.
I'm actually going to go even more specific than that. I'm going to put into the chat my favorite Eric Carr performance. This is from when he first joined. So he is still in the Fox makeup. This is from 1980, Sydney, Australia. This is him singing Black Diamond.
It's Anonymous.
What's
I
up,
love that guy.
Anonymous?
But yeah. Justice for Anonymous. He's better than Cash. Don't let anybody tell you differently.
Yes.
But yeah. Well, like I said, Eric Carr stream really hits home because, like I said, I'm a Kiss fan. Not much now lately with the newer version, the last 23 years. But I am more a Eric Carr fan. And he was great in Kiss. They could have given him a little bit more and probably would have been even better. But I think the bottom line is they should have treated the man at the end a lot better than what they treated him.
Agreed, 100%.
Yeah. So thank you, Paul, for joining me on the stream. We'll
Thanks for having me.
Part 3 of the Kiss stream later this week. And thank you, everybody. Hope you enjoyed listening to it. I know we rambled, but yeah, what can you say when you're talking about individual? There's only so much, and we only have 9 years of material to talk about with Eric Carr. So,
Yes.
but them 9 years are some pretty darn good years as a Kiss fan. So, thank you all, and hopefully you can join us for the next Kiss stream. Have a good night.
Yes.
Thank you.
See ya.